Hi everyone, welcome back to Eve Math Tutoring. Today's lesson is on functions. So the question is, what is a function? So a function is an equation that enables us to find one y for any given x. So an example could be something like the following. So if you have the equation y equals 3x minus 5, this is considered a function. And the reason for that is whenever we plug in different values for x, we get different values for y. And if we were actually going to draw this in a diagram, and we had our x's here and our y's here, and if we did the numbers 0, 1, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2, and over here we did the numbers negative 8, negative 5, negative 2, and 1. Then if I plugged in negative 1 into this equation, I would get negative 3 minus 5, which would take my answer over here. And then if I plugged in 0, I would get the 0 minus 5, which would be negative 5. If I plugged in 1, I would get 3 times. And these are just random values I picked over here. If I plugged in 3 times 1, I would get 3 minus 5, which would be negative 2. And then 3 times 2 would be 6 minus 5, which would be 1. Okay, so I just plugged some regular random values in for x, and I found my y values. And when we actually do a diagram like this, we see that for each x value, we have one corresponding y value. Another example of an equation that's a function is the following. So the equation y equals x squared is also considered a function. And that is because if we plug in values into x, then this is what we get. So let's try some values. So let's start off with, say, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2 for our x's. If I plug negative 1 into here, and I'm just going to put in some other values in here. Okay, so if I actually plugged in negative 1 here, I would get 1. So negative 1 would go to 1. 0 would go to 0. If I plugged in 1, I would also get the answer 1. If I plugged in 2, I would get the answer 4. So each value goes to another value. However, if you have two x values going to the same y value, that is permitted in functions. So it's still considered a function. Okay, so even though negative 1 and 1, two different x values give you the same y value, because you still end up with a y value, and you are allowed to have two x values going to one y value. Now, what you're not allowed to have in functions is the following. I'm just going to show you an example. So you are not allowed to have from one x value going to two different y values. So for example, if you have the equation y equals plus or minus root x, this is not a function. And if equation is not a function, then it is considered a relation. And the reason it's not a function is that when we actually draw this one out in diagram form, we see that, so for example, if my x value is 4, the root of 4 is both negative 2 and 2. So this answer here goes to two different y values. And then the root of 9 would be positive. Okay, sorry, this one here is positive 2, negative 2, and positive 2. And then the root of 9 would go to positive 3 and negative 3. So as you can see, you've got, and this is not considered a function, okay, because you've got from one x going to two y values, and that's what we don't want. So that type of situation would be considered a relation. So to remember these rules, I can show you a quick diagram. So basically for functions, if you're looking at x's and y's, if you've got two numbers going to one number in the y's, that's allowed. Or if you've got one number going to one number from x to y, that's also allowed. But what is not allowed in functions is when you have one number for x that goes to two numbers for y. That is not considered a function. Okay, so this situation is not a function. Okay, this is maybe a relation, and this here, these are considered functions if you have these types of situations. So that's how you can remember and see if something is a function or not. Okay, so that's a little lesson on functions. So they do take equation forms, and like I said, basically you want, you know, one y for x, and for each x there corresponds one y, and even if it's the same y, that's fine. But over here, as you can see, for this x there corresponds two different y's, and that's when it's not considered a function. So for each y, for any x, there corresponds one y. Okay, so for your x value, you have to have one y value. Even if it's the same y value, that's fine for two different x's. However, if you've got an x that corresponds to two different y's, that's when you know that you're not dealing with a function. Okay, because for functions you would only have these types of situations here. Okay, so I hope that helps you understand what a function is.